He didn't look at me when he said it. He looked at his phone. "They need me," he said, already standing up from the table. I remember the sound of his chair scraping across the floor. Loud, sudden, final. I had cooked his favorite meal that night. Not because it was special, but because it had been weeks since we had eaten together without interruption. The food was still steaming when his phone buzzed again. Short, urgent, demanding. He didn't hesitate. "I'll be back before it gets cold," he added. But he was already halfway to the door. And that's when I felt it. Not jealousy. Not anger. Something quieter. I realized I was competing. And I hadn't even known there was a competition. The door closed. Not slammed. Just firm. The house felt larger immediately. Like it had exhaled and left me inside it. I stood there for a long moment, staring at two plates. One full. One untouched. That was the first time I understood something I had been avoiding. He wasn't leaving me. He was choosing them. And the worst part wasn't that he went. It was how easily he did it. It wasn't the first time he left mid-sentence. It was just the first time I noticed how quickly he moved. Before that night, I used to tell myself it was temporary. "They're going through something," he would say. "They still need me," he would add. As if that explained everything. And maybe it did. They were his children. Grown, yes. But still calling when the car broke down. When an argument erupted. When life felt unfair. I understood that. I truly did. What I didn't understand was why every call felt urgent. And every moment with me felt optional. The phone would light up. His face would change. His shoulders would straighten like a soldier responding to command. When I spoke, he listened. When they called, he moved. There is a difference between hearing and choosing. I learned that slowly. One Sunday afternoon, we were halfway through coffee when his phone vibrated again. He didn't even check the message fully. Just the name was enough. "I have to go," he said. Not, "Do you mind?" Not, "Can this wait?" Just, "I have to go." I nodded. Because what else does someone do when they realize they are no longer the priority? The coffee cooled between my hands. The clock ticked loudly in the quiet. And something small inside me shifted. Not broken. Not yet. But repositioned. I stopped expecting him to stay. Even while he was still sitting across from me. The strange thing about being replaced slowly is that no one announces it. There's no meeting. No confession. No apology. Just small adjustments. He began sitting closer to the edge of the couch. As if ready to stand at any second. His phone stayed face up now. Never upside down like before. Even during dinner. It rested beside his plate. Silent. But powerful. One evening, I asked him softly, "Can it wait?" He didn't look angry. He looked surprised. "They're my children," he replied. As if I had questioned something sacred. I hadn't meant it that way. I wasn't asking him to abandon them. I was asking for one uninterrupted hour. But in that moment, I saw it clearly. In his mind, my request felt selfish. Theirs never did. The room felt smaller after that. Like the walls had leaned in to listen. I stopped reaching for his hand when his phone buzzed. Because I already knew which direction he would turn. And once you start predicting someone's choice, something changes. You don't argue. You don't beg. You prepare. That night, when his phone rang again, I didn't ask anything. I simply watched. He stood up. Just like before. Only this time, I didn't feel surprised. I felt informed. And that was worse. Because surprise carries hope. But certainty is quiet. And quiet realizations last much longer. The moment that changed everything wasn't loud. It happened on my birthday. I hadn't planned anything extravagant. Just dinner at home. A quiet evening. Maybe a small cake. He had promised. "This one's yours," he said the night before. I believed him. The table was set. Candles lit. The house calm in that soft way it gets before night fully settles. At 6:30, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it. Then at me. I saw the hesitation. Brief. Almost invisible. "It'll only take an hour," he said. One of them needed help. Something about a flat tire. Or maybe an argument. The details blurred later. What stayed clear was this. He blew out my candles before I could. "I'll relight them when I get back," he added. The door closed. Gentler than usual. I stood there in the quiet. Smoke rising from extinguished wicks. Do you know how long a house can feel when you're alone inside it? Waiting. I didn't cry. That would have meant I was surprised. Instead, I sat down at the table. Across from an empty chair. The cake remained untouched. The plates stayed warm. The clock kept moving. And sometime between 7 and 9, I understood something with a clarity that hurt. I was not competing with emergencies. I was competing with importance. And I had already lost. After my birthday, something inside me grew quieter. Not colder. Just careful. I stopped planning dinners that required timing. No more meals that depended on both of us sitting down together. If he was home, we ate. If he wasn't, I wrapped the plate and put it away. I told myself it was maturity. That love meant understanding priorities. But understanding and shrinking are not the same thing. I began measuring evenings differently. Not by what we shared, but by how long he stayed before the phone lit up. Sometimes it didn't ring at all. And those were the most confusing nights. Because I would sit there waiting for it. Almost expecting the interruption. When it didn't come, I felt relieved. And strangely tense. As if peace had to justify itself. He didn't notice the changes in me. Or maybe he did and thought they meant I was finally adjusting. I laughed at the right moments. Nodded when he spoke about their problems. Asked polite questions. Inside, Something was rearranging itself. There is a moment in every relationship when you stop asking to be chosen. Not because you don't want to be, but because the answer has already been shown to you enough times. One evening, while he talked about helping them refinance a loan, I heard myself say, "That's good." My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone who had stepped a few feet back from her own life. And in that distance, I felt something new. Not anger. Space. He noticed it one night, though I don't think he understood what he was seeing. We were sitting in the living room. Television on. Volume low. His phone buzzed. A short vibration across the coffee table. He glanced at it, then at me. I didn't look up. That surprised him. Before, would have stiffened, or paused mid-sentence, or asked softly, "Is everything okay?" This time, I simply kept knitting. The needles clicked together. Steady. Uninterrupted. "Don't you want to know who it is?" he asked. There was no accusation in his voice. Just curiosity. "I'm sure it's important," I replied. And I meant it. That's what unsettled him. He didn't reach for the phone immediately. He watched me instead. I could feel it. His eyes measuring the distance between us. When he finally answered, he stepped into the hallway. He always stepped into the hallway now. As if conversations had weight. I kept knitting. Row after row. Loop after loop. The rhythm felt grounding. When he returned, he stood in front of me longer than usual. "Everything all right?" he asked. Such a small question. So late. "Yes," I said. And for the first time, it wasn't a lie. Because I had stopped expecting anything different. And once expectations disappear, disappointment loses its power. He sat down again. Closer this time. But something invisible had already shifted. Closeness offered late feels different. It feels borrowed. The calmer I became, the more relaxed he seemed. It's strange how silence can be mistaken for peace. He started staying a little longer before answering calls. Sometimes even letting them ring twice. As if he was proving something. To me. Or maybe to himself. One Sunday afternoon, he said, "You've been really understanding lately." He smiled when he said it. Like he was proud of us. I smiled back. Because correcting him would have required energy I no longer had. Understanding had nothing to do with it. I had simply stopped competing. When the phone buzzed again, he didn't move right away. He looked at me first. Waiting. I nodded toward the hallway. A silent permission slip. That was the moment I knew something had ended. Not because he left, but because I no longer cared whether he did. The opposite of love isn't anger. It's indifference. And indifference doesn't arrive loudly. It settles. Like dust on furniture you forgot to touch. That evening, while he explained a disagreement one of them was having, I found myself thinking about the garden instead. About trimming the roses. About repainting the fence. He was speaking. I was drifting. Not away from him entirely. Just away from needing him to choose me. And once you no longer need to be chosen, you begin choosing yourself. He didn't see it happening. Most people don't notice the moment they are no longer being fought for. The real turning point came at dinner with friends. We hadn't gone out in months. And when we did, I chose the restaurant carefully. Quiet. Small. The kind of place where conversation lingers. Halfway through the main course, his phone lit up on the table. He flipped it over this time. Face down. Our friends kept talking. Laughing about something trivial. The phone buzzed again. Longer. He shifted in his seat. I saw the conflict flicker across his face. Brief. But real. "Excuse me," he said finally, pushing his chair back. He didn't look at me when he stood. He looked at the phone. I watched him walk toward the entrance. Already dialing back. One of our friends leaned closer. "Everything okay?" she whispered. I smiled. Too easily. "He's needed," I replied. The word tasted different that night. Heavier. Through the window, I could see him outside. Pacing. Gesturing. Fully engaged. He stayed out there longer than necessary. Longer than polite. Our friends resumed talking. But something in their tone shifted. I realized then. This wasn't private anymore. His choices were visible. When he returned, he apologized. Quickly. Distracted. "I have to head over there after this," he added. Not asking. Informing. And for the first time in a public room full of witnesses, I felt nothing at all. That absence of feeling frightened me more than any argument ever could. Because anger means you still hope. But emptiness. Emptiness means you've already begun to leave. He began watching me more closely after that dinner. Not obviously. Not suspiciously. Just attentive. As if something familiar had gone slightly out of place. One evening, while we sat across from each other at the kitchen table, he said, "You've been very quiet lately." It wasn't an accusation. It was confusion. I stirred my tea. Slowly. "I've always been quiet," I replied. He shook his head. "No, not like this." The room felt still. Like it was waiting for something honest. But honesty would have required him to hear something he wasn't ready for. He reached for my hand across the table. And I let him. His grip felt careful. Almost testing. "Are you upset with me?" he asked. Such a simple question. So late in the story. I looked at him then. Really looked. At the lines near his eyes. At the faint worry in his expression. He wasn't a villain. He was a man who believed he was doing the right thing. And somehow, that made it harder. "I'm not upset," I said. And that was true. Upset implies heat. Emotion. Expectation. What I felt was cooler. Measured. He squeezed my hand once more. Relieved. Relief can be dangerous. It makes people stop asking deeper questions. Later that night, his phone buzzed again. He didn't move immediately. He looked at me first. And for the first time, I didn't nod. The phone continued buzzing. Soft at first, then persistent. He glanced toward the hallway, then back at me. "You're not going to say anything?" he asked. His voice carried something new. Uncertainty. I folded my hands in my lap. "Steady. What would you like me to say?" He frowned slightly, as if the answer should be obvious. "That it's okay," he replied. There it was. Not the call. Not the children. Permission. He didn't want my opinion. He wanted my blessing. For years, I had given it automatically. Like breathing. This time, I stayed quiet. The silence stretched. Longer than either of us expected. Finally, he stood. But slower than before. "If you have something to say, just say it," he added. His words weren't sharp. They were tired. I looked at him carefully. "I don't think it matters what I say," I answered. That landed. I saw it in the way his shoulders tightened. "Of course it matters," he insisted. I shook my head gently. "If it did, you would already know." The room felt different after that. Heavier. Honest in a way it hadn't been before. The phone buzzed again. Insistent. This time, he let it ring out. And for the first time in years, he didn't move. The phone stopped buzzing. The house felt unusually still. Almost fragile. He remained standing for a moment. As if unsure what to do with himself. "They'll call back," he muttered. Not to me. To the air. I nodded once. But inside, something shifted again. For years, I had believed the problem was the calls. The urgency. The constant need. But standing there in the quiet, I realized something deeper. Even when the phone was silent, I had still felt second. It wasn't about interruptions. It was about instinct. When something happened in their world, he moved. When something happened in ours, he measured. He sat down slowly. Across from me. "They rely on me," he said. There was pride in that sentence. And exhaustion. "I know," I answered. "And I'm glad they do." He looked up sharply. Surprised by the absence of challenge. "But," he prompted. That small word hung between us. Heavy. "But you never realized I did too," I said. There it was. Not shouted. Not dramatic. Just true. He leaned back in his chair. Eyes narrowing slightly. "That's not fair," he replied. Fair. Such a fragile word. "I didn't ask you to choose between us," I said quietly. I just wanted to know I was chosen at all. Silence filled the space again. This time thicker. And for the first time, he had no quick explanation. No phone to answer. No hallway to escape to. He rubbed his forehead. A gesture I had seen 100 times before. "I've always been here," he said. It wasn't loud. It was wounded. I never left you. And in his mind, that was proof enough. I studied his face, trying to see the situation the way he did. He paid the bills, fixed the sink when it leaked, sat beside me at night. Physically, he had been present. But presence and priority are not the same. You were here, I agreed. His eyes softened slightly, thinking I was conceding. But you were always ready to go, I added. That landed harder than I expected. His jaw tightened. Not angry, but exposed. They're my children, he repeated, as if the sentence could shield him. I never asked you not to be their father, I said. I just wanted to be your partner. The word lingered in the air. Partner. Equal. Chosen. He stood up again. This time not because the phone rang. He walked to the window, hands in his pockets. The street outside was quiet. Ordinary. I thought you understood, he said finally. I did, I replied. And that's the problem. He turned toward me slowly, confusion deepening. When you understand something long enough, I continued, you stop fighting it. And when you stop fighting, I said softly, you start leaving. The room felt different after that, as if something invisible had been named. And naming something makes it real. He didn't sleep much that night. I could hear him turning beside me, sheets shifting, breathing uneven. The house felt too quiet, like it was listening. In the past, if he couldn't sleep, he would reach for his phone, scroll through messages, check updates. That night, he didn't. He lay there, still, as if afraid that movement might confirm something he wasn't ready to face. In the morning, he made coffee before I did. That was new. The smell drifted down the hallway. Rich, familiar. When I entered the kitchen, he was already seated. 2 mugs on the table. I've been thinking, he began. Those words always carry weight. I sat across from him. Calm. He looked older in that light. Not weaker. Just reflective. I didn't realize you felt alone, he said. Alone. Interesting choice. I wasn't alone, I replied gently. You were here. He flinched slightly at that. But I was alone in being chosen, I continued. He exhaled slowly, as if understanding was arriving piece by piece. I never meant to make you feel second, he said. Intent. People cling to intent when impact feels too heavy. I know, I answered. And I did. That was the tragedy of it. There was no villain in our story. Just imbalance. And imbalance, left long enough, reshapes everything. The test came sooner than either of us expected. Later that afternoon, while we were clearing the dishes, his phone rang. Not a buzz. A full ring. Loud in the quiet kitchen. We both froze. Just for a second. He looked at the screen. And I watched his face carefully. I didn't ask who it was. I didn't need to. His grip tightened around the phone, then loosened. They need help moving some things, he said slowly. There it was again. The familiar pull. Only this time. He didn't move immediately. He looked at me. Really looked. Waiting. Not for permission. But for understanding. And I realized something surprising. The decision no longer felt like mine to influence. I had already stepped out of that role. You should do what feels right, I said. It wasn't passive. It wasn't bitter. It was neutral. Neutral can be frightening. He studied my face. Searching for something. A plea. A hint. A demand. He found none. The phone kept ringing. Insistent. He glanced down at it again. Then, slowly, he silenced it. Not declined. Not answered. Silenced. The sound stopped. But the tension didn't. I'll call them back later, he said. His voice was steady. But underneath it, something trembled. Because for the first time, he had not chosen automatically. And automatic choices had been the foundation of everything. The silence after he muted the call felt unfamiliar. Almost fragile. He placed the phone on the counter. Face down this time. That was new. For years, it had rested face up. Like an open door. Now it looked closed. He leaned against the sink. Hands gripping the edge. They're going to be disappointed, he said quietly. There was guilt in his voice. Deep and old. Yes, I replied. I didn't soften it. I didn't cushion it. Disappointment is not disaster. He looked at me then. Searching. I've never let them down, he added. And suddenly I understood. It wasn't about preference. It was about identity. He had built himself on being needed. Dependable. Available. Unfailing. If he wasn't responding immediately, who was he? You're not letting them down, I said gently. You're just not running. That sentence settled between us. He inhaled slowly. As if testing the weight of it. The phone buzzed again. A message this time. His eyes flickered toward it. Instinctively. Then back to me. The struggle was visible now. No longer hidden behind habit. I don't want to lose you, he said. There it was. Not defensive. Not proud. Afraid. And fear has a different tone. I held his gaze. You were never losing me in a single moment, I answered softly. You were losing me one automatic choice at a time. He closed his eyes briefly. As if that truth hurt more than accusation ever could. He didn't reach for the phone again. Not that evening. It stayed on the counter. Silent. Present. Waiting. We moved back to the table. Slowly. The dishes were already clean. There was nothing left to do. Which meant there was nowhere to hide. I didn't see it happening, he admitted. His voice had lost its certainty. I thought loving them well meant loving you less sometimes. I listened carefully. That's not what hurt, I said. He frowned slightly. What hurt, I continued, was that it never seemed difficult for you. That made him still. If choosing them over me had cost you something, I said softly, I would have felt valued. The truth of that sat heavy between us. He lowered himself into the chair. Slower than before. It did cost me something, he said quietly. What? I asked. He looked at me. Really looked. Us, he answered. And for the first time, I saw regret that wasn't defensive. It was reflective. Not fear of losing convenience, but fear of losing connection. I don't want to keep choosing automatically, he said. The word automatically sounded different now. Almost foreign. Change doesn't happen in declarations. It happens in patterns. I'm not asking you to stop being their father, I reminded him gently. I'm asking you to decide, sometimes, before you move. He nodded slowly. And for the first time in years, the phone buzzed. And neither of us reached for it. The sound faded on its own. And in that small, quiet space, something new began. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just intentional. And intention, when practiced, can rebuild what habits slowly wore down. Change didn't arrive the next morning with a grand gesture. It arrived quietly. Like most important things do. The phone still rang the following week. Of course it did. Life doesn't pause just because you've had a conversation. But something inside him had shifted. I could see it in the hesitation. Before answering, he would glance at me. Not for permission, but for awareness. Sometimes he answered. Sometimes he let it wait. The difference wasn't in the outcome. It was in the pause. That small pause mattered more than the choice itself. One evening, while we were walking around the neighborhood, his phone buzzed in his pocket. He stopped mid-step. Instinct pulling him. Then he exhaled. Slowly. We're almost home, he said. More to himself than to me. The phone buzzed again. He didn't reach for it. Instead, he reached for my hand. His fingers intertwined with mine. Steady. Present. We continued walking. The sky above us was soft with fading light. Neighbors watering lawns. Ordinary life unfolding. The phone eventually stopped buzzing. I'll call them back when we get home, he said calmly. Not rushed. Not guilty. Just decided. I looked at him. Searching for performance. There was none. For the first time. His body wasn't leaning away. It was beside me. Aligned. And I realized something important. I didn't need him to stop loving them. I needed him to remember that loving me required intention too. That night, when he returned the call, he didn't step into the hallway. He stayed at the kitchen table. Visible. Balanced. And that balance felt new. The real test came on a Sunday. Sundays had always belonged to them. Lunch visits. Projects. Unexpected needs. For years, I had adjusted my expectations around that day. This time, we had plans. Nothing extravagant. Just a train ride to the coast. A quiet afternoon by the water. We were halfway to the station when his phone rang. Not once, but twice in quick succession. His steps slowed. I felt it immediately. That familiar shift in the air. He pulled the phone from his pocket. Looked at the screen. One of them. His jaw tightened. "They're having trouble with the car again," he said. The words carried history. He could fix it. Of course he could. He had fixed everything for years. The phone rang again. He looked at the train schedule board ahead of us. Then back at the screen. I didn't speak. This wasn't my decision anymore. He closed his eyes briefly. Exhaled. Then he typed a message instead of answering. My heart beat slower. Not faster. I wasn't afraid. I was watching. "They'll need to call a tow truck," he said finally. His voice was steady, but I could hear the effort beneath it. The phone buzzed again. Longer this time. He silenced it. "Are you sure?" I asked gently. He looked at me. Clear. Present. "Yes," he said. Not defensive. Not rushed. Certain. The train doors opened. Air rushing around us. And for the first time on a Sunday, he stepped forward with me. Not away from me. That single step felt larger than all the previous departures combined. He was quieter than usual on the train. Not regretful, but thoughtful. The rhythm of the tracks hummed beneath us. Steady. Almost soothing. His phone rested in his coat pocket. Silent now. But I could feel its weight on him. "They'll figure it out," he said after a while. More reassurance than statement. "Yes," I replied softly. I wasn't worried about the car. I was watching him. His fingers tapped lightly against his knee. A nervous habit I hadn't seen in years. Guilt is strange. It doesn't always mean you made the wrong choice. Sometimes it just means you made a new one. He looked out the window. Fields sliding past. Gray sky stretching wide. "I'm not abandoning them," he said suddenly. There it was. The fear beneath everything. "I know," I answered. "And they'll know too." He turned toward me, studying my face. "Does it feel different?" he asked. Such a simple question. I considered it carefully. "Yes," I said. "How?" I reached for his hand. Not out of need, but out of choice. "It feels balanced," I replied. Balanced. Not chosen over. Not sacrificed for. Just held equally. He nodded slowly. The tension in his shoulders eased. Just a little. And for the first time in a long while, I felt something return. Not excitement. Not relief. Trust. Small. Fragile. But real. And trust, once rebuilding, moves quietly. One intentional moment at a time. The weeks that followed were not perfect. They were intentional. Sometimes he still answered immediately. Old habits don't disappear overnight. But now, there was awareness. If he stepped away, he returned fully. If he stayed without resentment. One evening, while we were preparing dinner together, his phone rang. He glanced at it, smiled slightly. "It can wait 10 minutes, he said. Not to prove something. Not to perform. Just stating a fact." We finished chopping vegetables. The sound of the knife steady against the board. Small talk. Shared glances. Ordinary comfort. When he finally returned the call, he did it beside me. Speaker on. Transparent. There was no tension in his voice. No urgency in his movements. Just balance. Later that night, he turned to me and said, "I didn't realize how automatic I had become." Automatic. The word no longer defensive. Just reflective. "It's easy to confuse being needed with being valuable," he continued. "And I think I forgot that being present here matters too." I didn't respond immediately. Some acknowledgments deserve silence. He reached for my hand. Not to hold me in place, but to stand beside me. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was waiting. Not for a ring. Not for permission. Not for interruption. The house felt different. Not because the phone had stopped ringing, but because choices were no longer made on instinct alone. And that difference changed everything. People often think relationships break in loud moments. Arguments. Betrayals. Doors slammed shut. But sometimes, they thin quietly. Through repetition. Through assumption. Through automatic choices made without noticing. What we rebuilt wasn't dramatic. There were no grand apologies. No sweeping declarations. There were pauses. Small ones. The kind that happen before answering a call. Before leaving the room. Before choosing where to place your attention. And those pauses changed everything. I learned something too. Silence can protect you. But it can also distance you. If I had never spoken that night in the kitchen. If I had continued smiling politely. Nodding. Adjusting. We might have grown old beside each other. And still remained apart. Balance is not about equal time. It's about visible intention. About knowing that when a decision is made, you were considered. That you mattered in the weighing of it. Now, when his phone rings, I no longer feel that quiet shrinking inside me. Sometimes he answers. Sometimes he waits. But every time, there is awareness. And awareness is a form of love. We sit together more now. Not because there are fewer demands, but because we choose to remain. And being chosen, even in small ways, restores something that automatic living slowly erodes. Love doesn't require perfection. It requires intention. And intention, when practiced, keeps two people from becoming strangers in the same room. Years from now, I won't remember every phone call. I won't remember which Sunday we chose the coast, or which evening we stayed home. But I will remember the pause. That small space between instinct and intention. That was the space where everything changed. We still grow older. Still navigate responsibilities. Still answer when needed. Life did not become quieter. We did. We learned that love is not proven by urgency. It is proven by awareness. By turning toward the person beside you. Before turning away. Sometimes he still says, "Give me a moment," before reaching for his phone. And that moment is enough. Because it tells me I am part of the decision. Not an afterthought. Not an adjustment. But included. In the end, he didn't stop loving them. He simply remembered to love me intentionally. And that was all I ever needed. Not to be chosen once, but to be chosen repeatedly. In small ways. In ordinary evenings. In quiet rooms. Love rarely leaves in a single storm. It fades in unnoticed habits. And it returns. The same way. Through small, conscious choices. And sometimes, that is more than enough.